Well, again, I'm certainly glad to be back from our Mexico trip and to be back in church with you today. And reminds us that although we're celebrating the so much about our country, and hopefully many of you had a good 4th of July, maybe things were mentioned, or at least you remembered some point around that point in time. We ate hamburgers and did homemade ice cream, and hoping that everybody at least took time, at least on their own, to remember what some of the sacrifices that people have made and continue to make. My sister's going out to see my nephew, who's in the Navy. He's been in the Navy almost 20 years, and he will be disembarking from his last shipboard tour on July 18th. I believe on July 18th, and that's her birthday. So even though she's not been feeling very well, she's going to drive out there to be there when he gets off the ship for his wife and his son. And that repeats hundreds and thousands of times every day across this country. Men and women who have really done so much to serve our nation and to keep us in the comfort and freedoms that we have. So we thank them for that. When we were down in Mexico, it's a different country. We just go across the border into Mexico, not very far, into Nuevo Laredo and the little environs around there, the little towns. And I'll tell you more about that later. But it reminded me that it's not America. There's no place like the United States. You can go 5 miles over the border and there's no place like the United States. But that was our 28th trip down there, and we were glad to be able to go. The theme for that trip, and I'm going to use that for the sermon today, we always try to pick a theme for our mission trip so that we're all sort of thinking the same thing as the 8 days unfolds that we're down there. And we have chapel services and debrief services, and we talk about this theme. And this year we picked Always Follow Jesus as the theme. And when I introduced that the first night, we have a chaplain. We have another pastor that goes down. He's our chaplain, but I always get to introduce the theme the first night. And I said, well, let's take that, Always Follow Jesus, and let's work that kind of back from the back end forward. Jesus. Think about that word first. And we spent some time on that. I won't spend as much time here with you guys. But we want to be sure if we're following somebody that we're following the right person. And in this case, we're following Jesus. And is it the Jesus of the Bible? Or is it the Jesus of our imagination? Is it Jesus that we feel comfortable with? Or the Jesus that kind of agrees with our viewpoint of different things? Or is it the real Jesus who gave us himself, first of all, in his sacrifice, and then gives us things to live by? And we follow him. We follow those things. We follow him as a person. We know he's the Son of the Father. We know he's the Creator. We know he's the Savior. We know he's a Redeemer. And if that's the Jesus that I wanted our folks to be following during the week down there. So let's go on to the next word, follow. What does following mean in this sense? Well, I think it means to identify with, to know, to learn from, to honor, to respect, to obey, to emulate, to represent. If we follow somebody, we do all those things. And then always, in every aspect of our life, in every day, in every event, in every thought, we strive, not perfectly, not without failures, we strive to always follow Jesus. So that was our theme down there. Mindy had read a series of verses out of Matthew 4. And to remind us of that story, Jesus calling his first disciples. And he goes out to the seashore and he walks along. And I remember, I'm kind of one of these, I get ideas on certain things. And one of the things I like to follow is Jesus movies. You know, over the decades, since the 40s, 50s, maybe before, they've made movies about Jesus, about his life. Some better than others as far as the movies are concerned. But in a number of them, Jesus looks like some kind of psychotic weirdo. And I find that interesting, that in order to make him look spiritual, I guess, or holy or godly, they make him look like he's spaced out in some way. And so I remember this one movie, he's walking along the beach, and the guys are out there just fishing away, you know, like they've never seen Jesus before in their life. And he walks up with this kind of this stare, like Dracula would have or something in the old Dracula movies, and he just like stares at him and he goes, "Come, follow me," and they just like, oh, and they just head off and start following him. And I'm thinking, eek, not sure that's quite the way that was, Maybe they knew Jesus from before, maybe they didn't heard him speak, maybe they knew his family. I don't know, but I just don't think they followed some kind of psychotic, strange person into something they had no earthly idea. But they did, it says, at once, or the other one says immediately, they left their nets and followed him. They did follow him. They did leave where they were in life and follow him. It was risky. It's a risky move, but it was kind of an obvious move in a way, because there was Jesus. He was right there, and whatever they knew or didn't know about him, whatever movement of the Holy Spirit was taking place, they followed this man that came walking down the beach. And have you ever thought about that it would maybe be easier to be a follower of Jesus back then? Because there he was. He was right there. And if he said, "Follow me," you went, "Okay." And you followed him. You did what he did. And you wake up in the morning, you go, "Jesus, what are we going to do today?" He goes, "Well, we're going to go down this road, we're going to go to this town, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that." And you're like, okay, you kind of got it lined out. I can follow that, I can do that. What are we eating for lunch? Well, we're going to go over here and eat lunch, or we're going to go down by the shore, and there's some people down there I need to speak to. You're following every day. When are we going to go to sleep? When are we going to get up? You're following Jesus back in those days. And I thought, well, that would be nice to have somebody right there that you could see and that you could hear and that you could touch. And it was speaking words that bounced off your eardrums, and he said, "Follow me, be like me, emulate me, do this." You're like, okay, I got that. So for 3.5 years, his followers followed him, Jesus, physically. And then he left. Then he was crucified. Then he was buried. Now he was resurrected. And he spent another 40 days on earth. And they saw him. In fact, if you want to be turning over to John 21, we're going to read some verses there. When he came to them on this instance, it says this is the third time that they had seen him since his resurrection. So he'd been around, but he wasn't around in the same way. He wasn't with them anymore. He wasn't with them on a daily basis. And they were sort of getting used to the idea that I've got to follow Jesus even when he's not here. And that gets a little trickier sometimes. That's a different mindset. So if we come over here to John 21, I want to talk about a couple other instances where he says to follow him. Has to do with Peter. I'm just sticking kind of with Peter, who's mentioned in all three of these times. You might remember after Jesus was resurrected, the disciples kind of decided they'd go back fishing, the ones that had been fishermen. And this story in verses 1 through 14 tells that Peter and some of the others were back out in the boats. They weren't sure what was going on with Jesus and this whole following thing and what was going to be the future in this occupation of following, I guess you'd say. And Jesus is on the shore and he's cooking some fish, and they first don't know who he is. But then he says something to him, and then Peter goes, "It's the Lord!" And he wraps his clothes around him and he jumps in the water and swims to shore. And there's Jesus cooking breakfast for him, and invites him into breakfast. And in verse 14, that's where it says it's the third time that Jesus has appeared to his disciples. Then we pick up in verse 15. Start reading there. It says, When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Remember, Peter had some issues in his life with Jesus. He had been all gung-ho. He'd been the first one to speak up, first one to jump in many cases. But he was also the first one to fail, the first one to doubt, the first one to betray Jesus. Not betray him, but deny Jesus, I should say. And he did it 3 times while Jesus was on trial before his crucifixion. And so Peter was the highest of the high, but he was also the lowest of the low of the disciples. And what do you think Peter felt like? What do you think he felt like? Knowing that he had denied his master, when his master had told him that you will deny me 3 times. And Peter said, oh no, never, never, wouldn't do it. But he did it. But he did it. And now here he's on the shore eating fish for breakfast with Jesus. And Jesus is speaking to him. Do you love me more than these other disciples, more than the world, more than anything that might come between us? Do you love me? And of course, Simon says yes. And then Jesus asked him again, Simon, do you love me? Yes. And then the 3rd time, are you sure that you really love me? And Simon said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep. Very truly, I tell you that when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Jesus would glorify God. And then he said to him, again, as he had said 3.5 years before, follow me. That would have been tough, wouldn't it have been, for Peter? Some say this means that Peter would be crucified, and according to church tradition, Peter was crucified, albeit, again, according to tradition, he asked to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy to be crucified in the same manner that his master had been. But whether that's true or not, Jesus is definitely giving him some indication here of what his life would be like. But what Jesus was doing more than that is he was re-involving Jesus. He was Peter. He was re-accepting Peter. Jesus had never thrown Peter to the curb. He had never done that. Even as Peter denied him, Jesus still loved and accepted and forgave. If he can be on the cross saying, Father, forgive these people that are laughing and spitting and mocking and gambling over my clothes, and if he can say, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing, he can certainly look at Peter and forgive Peter, even as Peter was denying him there at the fires before his crucifixion. And so here we are, maybe weeks later. Peter has had a lot of time to think about that. And Jesus is, in effect, telling him, I still trust you. I still include you. You're still one of mine. I still want you to feed my sheep. And yes, you may go through some things in your life that are going to be tough, but follow me. And Peter did. One more thing about following. We continue to read the verses, and I'd never really just thought about this in this way before. But in verse 20 it says, Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. Now that would be John. John always referred to himself in the 3rd person. He's writing the book, so he didn't say me. He said that disciple whom Jesus loved was following him. This was one who had leaned back against Jesus at the supper, the Lord's Supper, and had said, Lord, who is going to betray you? So he's identifying himself a little further. And then it's interesting. Peter saw him, that is John, and he asked, Lord, what about him? What about that guy? And Jesus answered, and this is so telling about Jesus' nature, the nature of God, and it's so telling about our nature as human beings. Jesus looked and he said this, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? Stop right there for a second. Do you ever do that? Do you ever find yourself looking at somebody else and going, yeah, they're a better Christian than I am? Or, I wonder if they're a better Christian than I am. I wonder how I rate on the scale with Jesus compared to this person. I wonder what's going on in their life. I wonder what Jesus is doing with them. Why isn't he doing that with me? He doesn't do that same thing with me that he does with John. John's a disciple whom Jesus loved. I'm Peter. I've never heard Jesus call me that. Rambunctious, boisterous, maybe faithful, but I don't know. I'm not like John. It's not fair. I find myself sometimes in life doing that, looking at other people, looking around, going, well, they're, it's different from them and from me. That other person's more blessed than me. Her testimony is more dramatic than mine is. Their conversion or their life story. They may have more talent than I do, more giftedness, more life experience in a certain way. Peter and John here got all this going on. And Jesus says, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. You. I just, in my mind, I emphasize the word. You must follow me. Don't worry about what John's doing. Don't worry about the guy down the street. Don't worry about the next door neighbor or even the other person sitting next to you in church. You must follow me. And that's what he's called us to do. He's called us to follow him when we feel lost, as Peter did. He's called us to follow him when we feel like a failure, when we don't feel spiritual enough, when we feel unworthy, when we're maybe sinning, when we're in the doldrums. He calls us to follow him. He also calls us to follow him when things are going well, when we feel spiritual, and when we've been keeping close to God. And that's a good time to follow him too. But there's no time where Jesus says, okay, now stop following me because you're just not measuring up right now. No, he still wants us to follow him because that's the only way we come back into relationship with him is to stay close to him. So whether it's the easy times, the tough times, the high times, the down times, the healthy, the sick, the rich, the poor, always follow Jesus. That's what he tells us to do. See, because he never gives up on us. He never stops calling to us to follow him. He never stops providing the means, the avenue, the communication channel. He never stops giving us his Holy Spirit to lead us and guide us, to be inside of us. He never pulls that away. He never separates himself from us. And so we always follow Jesus. You are in your own unique relationship with the Father through Jesus by the Holy Spirit. No one else in this room, no one else in this world is in the same walk, the same journey that you're in, that I'm in. They're different, they're unique, they're special. And so when I follow Jesus, it looks different than when you follow Jesus. Not radically different. We're still following the same Jesus. He's still giving us the guidelines. He's still giving us the boundaries to follow. But within that, there's a wide range of what that looks like. And so if we were to compare ourselves with John, we're going to limit what God can do through our individual following. And Peter, as we read the other books of the Bible that he's either been in or written, we found out that he found his way, and it was unique, and it was Peter. And sometimes he got himself in trouble, even later in life, and sometimes he did real well, but he was following Jesus, and we do the same. So in your giftedness, in your life experience, in your calling, in your way, in my way, we follow Jesus, not comparing ourselves with someone else. We do what we can do to follow, not what someone else does to follow. So I just want us to rest in that, to know that there's not an exact way, narrow way that you have to follow, but yours can look different. But we do follow the same Jesus. That's what I was pointing out to our folks down there. Because when we're on the mission trip, we have 8 days. We do at least 2 different activities each day. Some are children's homes, feeding. We're doing repairs. We're painting. We're doing outreach in a park. We're visiting a deportee center, a refugee center. It could be any of those things. And so even each day, our following Jesus, even as a group, much less the individuals within that group, looks different. And I tried to tell our people, you may be at the same activity that the rest of us are at because we all stay together. And somebody may be over here talking and playing with the children, and somebody else is over here repairing doors and somebody else is talking to the director of the place to find out what their needs are. And so when we get back to camp and we compare notes, everybody's got a different story. It's like you were at a different place almost. You saw different things. You were involved differently. But, we were all at the same place. We were all following Jesus. It just looks different. And we're able to share those experiences around. I want to show you a few photos. Giving Lee a little notice there. That's my nephew, by the way, running this down. He does a good job. I was gone 2 weeks, and I heard that both weeks y'all finished for church like 15 minutes early. That's good, because what I want to do is take those extra 30 minutes, and I'll just use them all today, and tack them onto the end of my sermon, because I want it to come out. I want it to average out. So that's what we'll do, sort of. I'll see if I can get through these in a reasonable time. Tell you a story or two about our trip. I hope it'll be inspiring to you just to hear about it. And I know many of you knew about it in advance, but have been praying for it. There's so many different things that happen on the trip, I'll just have to tell you a few. This is my garage with some of the items in it. And what this is, there's a craft store, a craft outlet, I guess you'd say, distribution house over in Big Sandy, not far from here. And they do fulfillment, it's called, for many different companies. One of the companies makes craft kits, okay? And you might get a kit, and it's all the parts and pieces, strings and rocks and metal and that you make jewelry with. You make some necklaces, make some earrings, Maybe you have another kit that's about making greeting cards, and you have all kinds of things you stick on and cut out. And they're high class. These aren't like kiddie things. These are nice things. But every now and then stuff overstocks and people quit buying it, and one of the guys there in Big Sandy, they give it to him for him to distribute. Not in the area, not to resell it. He's got to get rid of it somewhere. Otherwise, it just goes in their dumpsters. So we've got, I think it was 27 boxes of various kinds of craft kits stocked up here. And I figured that was about 1,620 actually kits individually. And we've never done, well, we haven't done that with these exact things, but we took these down to Mexico, loaded them in my U-Haul when I headed down, and we gave them to different pastors down there. So they're very, very poor churches, poor people, with the intent that maybe some of their people would put those kits together and make the jewelry or make the cards or make the other things and would sell them. They a lot of times do fundraisers for their church where they sell enchiladas or tacos to people in their community, stuff like that. And we thought this would be another way they could have something to kind of help their church and their pastorate out. So we divided those up between 3 different churches. And it'd be interesting to see next time we go down what's happened with that. So go ahead. These are samples of some of what comes out of some of the kits. Just wanted you to see that. All right, the next shot is handmade quilts. These happen to be Glenda's, I believe, right? These are all yours. Glenda's sitting right over there. And she makes beautiful quilts. Sent those on mini trips. And we get others that do crochet and knitting. And we don't know. People they hear about the trip and they give us stuff and we take it to Mexico and bless people with it. So thanks for that. There's it's kind of sideways, but my mom, who's the one with the shingles, hasn't been feeling well at all, but when she could, she does this every time, she would make cookies. And so there's like dozens and dozens of cookies in different boxes. She labels them for back at our camp, this children's home, that orphanage, and she knows where we're going, so she makes cookies for the various places, especially where there's going to be kids. Now that we're at our first place that we went to on the Sunday, the fellow on the right is Raimundo. We've worked with Ray for 14 years. On every trip we've been down there, we always do something with him. He's just kind of a ministry leader in the area, across the border in Nuevo Laredo, which is where we operate. We'd given him that guitar a few years ago. There's a long story, meaningful story with that. He's the pastor of this church. A church out of North Dakota built the frame of the church for him, so he at least has a roof and walls and a concrete floor, which is pretty unusual. It was the first day that the lady there at the microphone led music, so we got to be there the first time she led music. And he had a couple of friends. He doesn't normally have any other musicians other than him on guitar, but since we were going to be there, he had the other folks come in and play a little music. And so it's cool. We get to go be involved in their church or in their children's home or whatever it might be, and they know us and they trust us and they do special things for us and we do special things for them. And it's all about relationship with us. It's not a mission trip to necessarily get a bunch of things done, although we do that as well. If it was a choice between painting a wall and listening to a pastor or his wife or somebody tell us about some trials and troubles they were going through, we would sit down and listen to the pastor or his wife or whoever, and we'd let the wall remain unpainted, because the important thing we think is that God sends us down there is to encourage and be in relationship with these people is our top priority. So they have these kids. They've got a group that's called the Royal Rangers. They get different kind of ranks. It's kind of like Boy Scouts for the church directly. And they get the little berets as they work their way up. And so they're Ray's dad, who you'll see later in another photo, made that box for him. He apparently does some woodworking stuff, which I never knew. It was a very beautiful box, and that was the first week they used that box to take up their offering at church. And so they got a couple of Rangers doing that. All right, next. We're at the same place. We're at a building right next door to the main church. They helped to finish this building out one day and make it a feeding center and a after-school mentoring and classes and so forth with the kids. But right now, one of our people is presenting a Bible lesson to their kids. So go ahead, Lee. And we're now inside that building. He did the Bible lesson. I'll tell you more about that later at another place. And here we're teaching them some songs that have motions. Kids love to move, and so we have certain songs in Spanish that we do. And okay, so that was at the one place. That was at Raimundo's place. Moving along with the story, we're now at a different place. This is Pastor Fernando's, who is way over there on the left, standing under that fan with his little grandson and his wife behind him there. And we're teaching the lesson again, and we had about 50 kids, I think, at this place. They extend a little farther back in that room. And what we did at these kind of places, we teach them a Bible lesson, and it has a demo thing that they do, which they find kind of fun. And then we have a big craft project that ties into the Bible lesson, so the kids get to sit there and make something that they can take home. And they have a blast with that. And then we teach them some of these songs, which again are Christian, Spanish, motion, fun songs that have to do with the lesson. And we feed them snacks or a lunch or whatever. And then after 3 or 4 hours, we send them on their way. And we're wore out, and I hope they are too. So, but it never got over 100 degrees. We counted that a blessing. We've never been there in the summer that it has not gotten well over 100 degrees. So had a little front move through, and it was plenty hot, but it wasn't over 100. So this is a little demo that goes with the lesson. That box is what he did is he put some water, 2 or 3 water bottles in there, taped it up in there. So first you have one kid come up and you put it on their back. Well, of course, it's off balance and the water bottles are rolling around. It keeps falling off and they can't keep it on their back. So the deal is you get 2 kids to come up. You put it across their backs. Oh, that works better. In another instance, I'll just go ahead and tell you here, then there's a second part of the lesson where the guy has weights. We have a 5-pound weight, a 25-pound weight, a car jack, and other things. We're trying to make the point, and that's what the lesson's about, that even at their young age, but all of us, we have times in our life where we need help, where we need somebody to come alongside us. We need someone to help carry a load. We've got a burden. We've got something that's hard on us, that's heavy, that weighs on us. And of course, being in the environment that these kids are in, even they may be 3, 5, 8 years old, they have plenty of things to be concerned about. And they need Jesus, and we all need Jesus to help carry that load. He's there, and he's always there, and he's always faithful. And even if nobody else is around, he's with them, and that's the lesson. So they find out that works a lot better to have help. And here they're doing their Bible lesson. We have a printed Bible lesson, and they have a blast with that because it's got puzzles and crossword things and things to color. And so we do that for a little bit. Okay. This just random. The people on the trip, we didn't create this idea, but they found some things of yarn, and so they made, I don't know what you call it anymore, but when you get the yarn and you put it between your fingers and you make the little ladder and all this kind of stuff. Since I was 8, since I did that, well, that just became a popular thing, so we had to do that everywhere we went, and we didn't even plan that. Just a couple of the teenagers on the trip figured, let's just do that. So they were heroes from there on out. At this place, they cooked lunch for us. That's going to be a theme you're going to see through these slides, is us eating Mexican food, real Mexican food made by real Mexican people. And so that's a pastor's wife and another lady, and scrumptious lunch they're cooking. The next slide, I think, shows us eating their lunch. What a blessing that is. Years ago, we've been making this trip for many, many years, and they never offered to feed us. We would have never thought of asking them to. We never did ask them to. But as they've gotten to know us better, it becomes that hospitality thing. They trust us, and they go, when you come next time, what do you want to eat? Hey, chili granos, for me. So last time we were there, they made chili granos, and this time they made something else that somebody had requested. So it is wonderful to know that we're building that kind of relationship with these people. Let's go ahead. This is the only shot showing this pastor and his wife. That's the pastor sitting right in the middle under the tree back there, Pastor Pedro. We've done things with him many, many, many times. We just didn't do anything with him this time. Just didn't work into the schedule. But we went and visited with him for 2 or 3 hours one afternoon, him and his wife. We just sat under the tree and just talked and just heard what was going on with them and their 2 churches. And he's thinking of starting a 3rd church up in the mountains, about 6 hours to the interior. And just, these people are dedicated. They do amazing things with very little resources. So we were there. We went to a feeding center. This is on the U.S. side of the border. We usually spend one day on the U.S. side doing things. And this Pedro, he's dipping up a fruit cocktail kind of thing. And I think the next picture shows the people. This is just a homeless feeding center. They're in Laredo, and it's been around since the 30s. And it's the first time we helped out there, but we wanted to come kind of try that out and see if we could help and give the kitchen staff a little break for the day. And so we did breakfast, served breakfast, helped prepare lunch, served lunch. So we were there for several hours. Got to tell you a story here. The fellow on the left with the white hair, that's Randy. We've worked with Randy for a lot of years. He's not a pastor, he doesn't have a church. He's a Christian guy that felt moved years ago to help take care of the homeless, to help feed the homeless there in Laredo. So he began a feeding ministry every day at lunch. And that Bethany house where we were preparing or helping serve the meals, they prepare these meals for him in these styrofoam containers. And we've gone out with him before on these journeys. He gets them in his truck or a van or whatever he's got at the time. And he does this faithfully 5 days a week. And him and his wife, many days she'll go with him. And he drives around town, and we got to do this with him. We piled all the food and 16 people and him in our 2 vans, and we drove around town for 3 hours, under the bridge, over to the dumpster, back behind the 7-Eleven, back to another bridge, out in a desolate area over here, back. And he knew where all these people hang out, and he knows their situations. He knows if they're on drugs. He knows if they're prostituting on the street. He knows whatever it is. But he loves them all. He knows them by name. He asks what they need. If they need some clothes or some medicine, he'll try to get it for them if he can. So it's just really meaningful to go around with him and to see these people, some of which we've seen before. sad in a way that they're still in the streets, but we knew some of them from before. At this particular location, and I took this picture before the lady came up and got in it. We're at the top of an overpass. Down underneath the overpass, there's a whole bunch of people living down there, kind of a little commune, I guess. We didn't go down there and look, but they came up. We honked the horn, and they came up. And pretty obvious, most of them are on drugs. They were just kind of high as a kite right there. But they were real nice, and they appreciated the food, and they thanked us, and so forth. And there was one lady, and he told us the story as we were driving over there. One lady was 4 months pregnant, and she wanted to keep the baby, but she knew if she was addicted to drugs, when she had the baby, they would take the child from her. And it's a sad situation. So she wanted to get off of drugs, as I'm sure they all do. But she was just in this really sad state. He asked if we would pray for her, but she didn't come up initially. But then she did come up, and I didn't get a picture later. But she came up, she's just real haggard, barefoot, just pretty not in a good condition when she came up. Real sweet though, real nice. And it was hot. We're standing on this dirt. And she's like standing, putting one foot on top of the other, and then she switches and puts the other foot on top of the other, and she's kind of dancing around, talking, and we're going to pray for her. And one of the ladies in our group says, "Honey, you need something on your feet." So she takes her shoes off, and she gives her socks, and she goes, "Here, put these on." So the girl's like putting the socks on, but it's still really, really hot. And so the lady goes, "Well, just take the shoes." So she gives her the shoes off her feet. And the lady started crying. I can't imagine why. The lady goes, "Well, I got 3 other pair back to the place. I'll just go barefoot the rest of the day. No big deal." So the lady got a pair of shoes. And so go ahead if you would. This was some other ladies on the street. Again, they're all addicts. Some are prostitutes. Me and Mary got her little face stuck in between a couple of the ladies there. And we're just trying to love on them. We gave them these bags of toiletries. We knew we'd be doing this, so we brought with us a bunch of toothpaste and toothbrushes and rags and socks, and we pre-packed all this stuff at the camp, and we took it out with us that day. So we distributed probably between 200 and 300 meals. I think there's one more shot here, Lee. No, that was it. Okay. We go to a park at the very end, and there's usually 40 or 50 people at that park. The homeless hang out there. This is another ministry partner. They've just bought this 1.5 acres of land. It's just raw land down on the edge of town. They keep outgrowing they're actually in a neighborhood, little tiny houses, and they're trying to run a Christian school out of there, and they want to have a teaching center for pastors, and they want to have a housing for missionaries that come through. So they've been praying for several years, and they were blessed with 1.5 acres of land. And they had just gotten it, and we got to help start clearing it. So not quite 100 degrees, muggy, rains on us part of the time we're out there. We're picking up trash and yuck and bagging it and all this. So it was cool. I think we have a picture of us working. There we are, like a bunch of ants on the hillside. We're helping to start cleaning it up. But we did get some assistance. The next picture. Dun, da, da, dun. Here they come. They'd arranged for this guy. So we worked about an hour and a half, and then he comes in. Of course, he's not picking up the trash. He's clearing out the mesquite trees and the brush. And we're glad he got there because that made some headway. Eating again. We worked for a while, several hours, and then we go back in, and these ladies come out, and it's like a catering business, and they came out to serve us lunch, and that was great. We're now at another children's home. This is Raimundo, who I introduced you to earlier. This is his dad and mom's children's home, and we're playing Loteria, which is sort of like bingo. It's a Mexican game. We play that in several different places, and you can just see we just mix in. None of this is tightly scheduled. We got the stuff in the van. You show up. If the kids want to play with the jump rope, we jump rope. If they want to play some games, and we do the Bible lesson. We do all that stuff in between. Have a good time. this place they have some real issues with maintenance, and he doesn't have much money, and he's trying to keep his children's home going. And they've gotten inspections and told that this and this and this don't meet the inspection code. You're in trouble. So we talked to him before we went down there, and he told us some of the things that maybe we could assist with that would help them keep their license. And so we spent most of a couple of days there. We replaced doors, fixed doors, hung smoke alarms, did some electrical work, anything we felt qualified to do. And these guys are obviously working on doors right there. My wife's going to be sweet. Give me some water, I bet you. And then, of course, we eat again. And these are some of the folks in the kitchen that we took hot dogs because kids love hot dogs. I guess they never get hot dogs. So we always take hot dogs. And they cooked quesadillas or something. So it's quite a plate full of cool food. See a hot dog next to real Mexican food. It's kind of like, I don't know. This is the group. And, excuse me, that's the, on the far left in the striped shirt, that's Pastor Ray. He's the fellow that runs the orphanage, and his wife's sitting right next to him. And then our group mixed in there. So, make sure there's no water under here. Lamp oil. I don't think I should be drinking lamp oil, so we'll just wait on the water. Okay. All right, let's go ahead. I think we're getting close to the end here. We've never been, well, we've been to this place, but not under these conditions. This is a refugee deportee center, and things have obviously picked up the pace in the last year or two as you're listening to the news. And in this place, there's a building back behind us. I may have a shot of it. It's not much of a building, and there's people, in there. Now, it's on the Mexico side. All this is the Mexico side. Thank you. And this is what they're living in. This area is all Cubans. And it's just tarps and little tents and pieces of plastic and the best they can do. And there's a little kind of a place where they can do charcoal and cook. And there's some bathrooms. And that's pretty much it. It's 100 degrees out there, kind of sitting on the asphalt in your little tent, waiting for something to happen. Either be allowed into the U.S. or deported back to where you came from. So we heard a lot of their stories. This is Emmanuel on the right. He's from Africa, from Angola, and they got on a boat somehow, and they got across the ocean, and they got to I think he said Brazil or somewhere, probably Brazil, and then they mostly walked with some buses and other ways. And they got to the U.S.-Mexican border after weeks and weeks. And he's got 4 of his siblings with him, all younger than him. And talked to us quite a bit. We're handing out some tracts of the Gospel of John, and they were glad to have them, to have something to read. So very interesting stories there. The folks there in the gray shirts, they're on our team. They're from Alaska. This will be their 4th summer, I think, to come down from Alaska and join us. So he's our main fix-it guy. One of our teens that has been on our trip before, a couple of years ago, she's in a running club out in her home area in Georgia, girls running club. And so a couple of years now, and they did it again this year, they get to the end of the season. Of course, they have these shoes that have only been used for a year, so they're still in pretty good shape. And the kids can either keep them, they're theirs, and they'll get a new pair at the beginning of the next year, or they can donate them, and they box them up and they ship them to us. In this case, because she didn't come this year, but she went ahead and collected 172 pair of shoes and paid to ship them over, and then sent us a donation for $200 out of the money people had given to pay the shipping costs. So we got 172 pair of shoes and $200 donation, just to show how what God does in different areas. And we gave the shoes away at different places, but we gave a lot of them away here at this refugee center. And I felt like I was working in a shoe store, because we'd actually have them come in 3 or 4 at a time into this tiny little office very hot office, and because we didn't want to create like a riot, everybody grab and choose, and we would custom fit each person and then send them out. So it's kind of cool. And then we ate again. This was at a juice and taco bar thing. So, all right. And I think one of our last places here, we're at Pastor Marta's. She's a lady, pastors this church. It's not really a church, it's more like a children's ministry. And we've gone there several years with them. And here we're teaching a lesson again. There's about 45, 50 kids. And we're having a grand time there. They're wonderful people. Go ahead, Lee. That's the lesson I was telling you with the weights. Can you pick up this little weight? Yeah. Can you pick up this bigger weight? Ugh. Can you pick up this whole box full of weights? No. And so you need help. So we get the second kid to come up there, one on each end, pick up the box, and then they can pick up the box and carry it. Well, you need Jesus to carry your load. Alicia, the grandmother there, had never been to this church, never been inside this building before, but when they went out a couple days before and walked the neighborhood to tell people this event would be going on and these missionaries from the U.S. were going to be down, she decided to bring 3 of her grandkids and come to it. And so she was having trouble reading the lesson initially, and so they were kind of helping her. She could read, but we realized she couldn't focus. She couldn't read it. And we had taken some reading glasses, just you never know what's going to show up on this trip. We had a box full of reading glasses. So we give reading glasses out and fitting, okay, do you need a 2.25 or a 2.5 or, and now she's got her reading glasses or whatever. She's having a good time. They're doing their craft thing there, same place. Go ahead. Boy, are we eating here. David, skinniest teenager on the whole thing, 2 giant plates of food. He's giving it the thumbs up. He hasn't even tried it yet, so all right. Last day of the trip, this is Sister Juanita. We see her and her children all the time. She runs this place mostly by herself. She's got about 15 to 20 kids. And we try to help her out as best we can. Go ahead. We bring them supplies and stuff. We play with the kids. Go ahead, Lee. We bring them paper towels and toilet paper, cleaning supplies, things. Go ahead. We play Loteria again under the covered porch, still hot. And last year we took them a slip and slide. This is the second year. They use it when we're there. They use it a little bit more, then they fold it up. And then they wait till we come the next year so we can put it all back out for them, and then they get to enjoy it for the summer again. So those boys, we got there at 9:30, and if we would not have made them come in and eat lunch, they would have been on that slip and slide at 4 o'clock in the afternoon without getting off. They're just crazy. So, and that's it. So that's what we did on that particular trip. I tie that in to the always follow Jesus that we started out, knowing the real Jesus, following him as you know how and are able, and following him always. It's good to be able to go on a trip like that. You learn a lot, you see a lot, but that's not real life for most of us. That's a mountaintop experience. That's something that happens that brings you an awareness. But you and I in our lives every day, we see in little individual things as well, and God's doing things right where you are and where I am. And it may be minuscule, like just something in the grocery store, or something with a neighbor, or something with a family member. But he's going to present opportunities to each of us. We don't have to cross an international border and go somewhere and buy a plane ticket to always follow Jesus. We can do it right where we are, with the people that are already in our lives. So follow him always. Always follow Jesus.